What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. I've been traveling around and taking care of some electromechanical stuff, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. First of all, I went to the Houston Arcade Expo a couple weeks back, and that was my first time going to that show. It's a very different show than any other show that I've really been to. It skews very heavily towards arcade games, and the atmosphere is very party-like. It's really pretty cool, and it goes to all hours of the day and night. It's a lot of fun. So, I went out to the Houston Arcade Expo because Sean Farwell had created an acrylic bingo, and not just any bingo, it was Golden Gate. What he did is took a Golden Gate that was mostly functional and moved it over to a cabinet that he made custom out of acrylic. He also created a playfield out of acrylic and then etched it and beveled the holes. It was extremely impressive. So the end result is that you can see all the mechanisms moving while you're playing the game. Pretty neat. Very helpful for troubleshooting in some instances. So Sean was right up to the deadline as far as finishing the project, and I flew out there just in case there were any problems with it, after transport. Bingos were a new thing to Sean, so I wanted to make sure this had the best debut that it possibly could. So Dennis Stodel and myself went out there, and we were both on hand and inspected the game and played a couple rounds and found out there was some stuff that wasn't working right. So just real quickly, I wanted to talk about some of the fixes. They were all extremely minor, and it was a lot of fun, honestly, to get this going, because it was like working on a brand new game. It was not like working on a Golden Gate, because the problems were problems of not construction, but fabrication. So, for example, there was a relay bank that's attached to the back door, and it has 4 relays. One of those relays controls the payout for the red letter game. Well, the red letter game was going all kinds of crazy, and it wasn't any of the traditional relays. It was just one of the relays was getting stuck that stops the forward movement of one of the steppers when it hits the appointed position. So this stop relay was actually getting hung up. When it actuated, it couldn't unlatch because the relay was actually screwed to the acrylic back door, but there wasn't quite enough room for it to flex and move that spring. So the construction was correct. It was in the right spot and it was doing the right things. It just couldn't, it needed that 1/64th of an inch of clearance or whatever it was. Pretty neat. And the Magic Screen coil, Magic Screen index coil switches, my old nemesis, caught up with me in Houston as well. So one of the switches shuts off the lights to the bingo card. So the lights just mysteriously stopped working all of a sudden, and that was the cause. Aside from that, there were a couple other little minor things, but I thought the game held up very well, and I also thought it was a lot of fun to play, being able to see the interior. Now, it did make it a little difficult to explain, because for this debut release here, there was no art on the back glass. It was just a piece of glass. So, luckily, both Dennis and I know these games pretty darn well, I'd say. So I was able to teach people how to play by pointing to the various parts of the back box and saying, you'll have to take my word for it, but this is what this means. But people were very receptive. I got to meet several folks that I hadn't met before, but we'd communicated over the internet. I thought that was super cool. Everybody was really nice. I got to see some of the custom pinball folks, which I always have a blast talking to them, and got to sit in on a couple custom pinball seminars, and or a custom pinball seminar, and then the Multimorphic seminar. So I thought that was nice, and I got to see Jerry again from Multimorphic. That's always a pleasure, and he got to show me his bingo prowess, so always good. So that was Houston, and I think it was great. So the game actually came back with Dennis, and will be at the York show this year. At least that's the current plan. Sean wasn't going to be able to take it out over the next year to any shows, and as he said, this is a game that needs to be shown, so people need to be able to play it and see it. And York seems like a logical place for that to show up next. So Dennis has got it back with him, and he is going to make a few tweaks, and then it'll be out again for Bingo Row. In other news, I worked on a Williams Deluxe official baseball, 1960 wood rail pitch and bat, from a very patient owner. He's been waiting on the repair for a couple months while I was at York and traveling for work and so forth. So thanks to him for the patience. But also, I got to fix a Williams Deluxe official baseball, which I'd never seen one before. Beautiful game. It's got players, actual physical figures on the field. They're mounted behind these metal plates. There are holes in the playfield instead of targets. So when you're hitting the ball, it sinks into one of these holes. Some of the time, it will knock you out if you hit one of the players, and other times, the hole will be lit and it will score a single if you hit it. Pretty neat. Most of the high-value targets are way in the back. The game doesn't count strikes or balls or anything like that, but it does play, phenomenally well. I think it's a really neat game. It's 2-player, and it has a feature where it can keep track of the highest score and then reset that on the next game. That one had one common problem that I thought I would go over. There were fuses put into both the normal line fuse block and the low line voltage fuse block. So if you put one in each of those, then the game will get real freaked out and things will not work correctly at a minimum. At a maximum, bad things can happen, but luckily in this case, nothing bad happened. No bulbs got fried, no coil problems, anything like that. No transformer issues. It was just a matter of unplugging one of the fuses and then verifying that all the mechs and everything were working. And that fixed the majority of problems. Another problem, excess lubrication. So there were metal pivot points on the trip bank. On a Williams trip bank, there's this big metal arm and a huge 120-volt coil. When that pulls in, it's got to slam that arm into the bottom of the trip relays so that they reset. Well, it was so gummed up that it just kind of lazily flopped up against the bottom of the trip relays when they were tripped and then went back down. So nothing was getting reset. The game was totally confused, thought it was in game over mode. All kinds of problems were related from that. Once those two items were done, there were only a couple of things that needed some schematic tracing, but it was generally working pretty well at that point. Fun game, and really beautiful. If you happen to come across one, give it a look. That brings us to some listener mail. Listener Gene dropped by a place in Long Beach, California called Loof's Lite, and he sent me some impressions of the games there. They're kind of bingo-esque games where you plunge and the balls have to go into particular lanes in order to win. And when you win, you get paid off. So pretty interesting little gambling pinball game, and let's see what he has to say. Hey Nick, so I dropped by Loof's and checked it out. I actually played with $6 to start since it's $1.50 a game, and I wasn't sure if I would like it and or how much of a game of skill versus luck it is. It's definitely way more luck-based as I was initially nudging a little bit, and then read you're not allowed to do that. It was hard to actually nudge since the machines are all in line and mounted to the place that you sit at. I did end up winning twice, so you earn 15 credits per win, and each credit, I guess, is $1. There's a $2 perfect bonus, and basically it's like pachinko bingo. You have a plunger, you plunge the balls, and then they bounce around into color-sectioned areas with the numbers 1 through 5 in them. So if you get all 1s in each color, that's a bingo, and I think you're spotted the red 3 in the middle to start with, like a free space, I guess, on regular bingo. There's a bit of skill to the plunge, but after that, it's a lot of lucky bounces, or not. You play against everyone, and once someone wins, it stops the machines from letting you plunge. It's automated, and if someone hits their bingo while your ball is bouncing around and you hit your final bingo on that ball, you also win. Payouts are fixed at $15 per win, and I think the business model is the more people that are playing, the more the house wins, since someone has to win each round. The perfect, I think, would be 4 plunges to a bingo. It was pretty fun, and I cashed out at $15, so I was $12 up. I'd suggest checking it out if you're in the area ever. Definitely worth a short visit, and there's some more memorabilia there to check out as well. Gene. Well, Gene, thanks very much for writing in, and I very much appreciate hearing about these interesting little gambling pinballs on the show. There's a few different kinds that I've heard of, and I've heard of Loof's Lite before, but I've never really heard anyone's first-hand account of playing the games. And that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to me on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to me on my website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and if you're in America, have a very happy Thanksgiving, and I'll talk to you next time. So, I thought I'd leave this in here at the end, a little Easter egg, but that beep is something that I've been fighting. It goes off every approximately 1 minute and 30 seconds, and the entire time I've been recording, it's been doing that. Now, if you had to guess what made that beep, would you say a dishwasher? Because that's what did it. One of these days, I'm going to take it apart and cut that speaker out. I have no idea what that's for. It's alerting you that you've opened the dishwasher because you don't want it to make noise.